So the Chief Constable's report is out. It's going to be laid before Tynwald. We've got a brief moment in time with you because you are doing a lot of media today. The safest place in the British Isles. It sounds like I'm just, having one of those flashbacks. Every year you're going to start off with that's the big headline. I know it does make great headlines.
Well, in comparison with the UK and in comparison with the Crown dependencies, we're even safer this year than we were a year ago. So we're now, in terms of recorded crime per head, per 100,000 population, we are 4 times safer than England and Wales, which is really significant.
Yeah, is it recorded crime? I mean, that's all you can go on. I understand.
Well, recorded crime is one way of measuring the effectiveness of the police, but it gives you a bit of barometer of how things are. So recorded crime has crept up a bit, but it's crept up in 3 ways: more drugs offences, which is a sign of police activity; more financial crime, which is partly a response to the money val assessment and partly a fallout from the creation of extra law, but a bit more violence, and the violence is linked to the drug seizures. And no doubt you'll talk to me about that, but that's quite a significant thing, and I think it's something that we as a community need to be alive to, really.
Okay, the drug situation. I mean, looking at the courts and what's going on, it looks like almost every other thing that's going through seems to be drug related, and no end in sight until the lawmakers change things. I mean, we talk about this every year again.
We talk about it every year, but drugs made up 13% of recorded crime 3 or 4 years ago. They now make up 18% of recorded crime. So that's a significant move in a really short period of time. Mm-hmm. In a period that straddled the year that's just finished and the previous year, we've seized £2 million in drugs and property from organised criminal groups in Liverpool. Mm-hmm. The drugs trade in the Isle of Man, in the assessments that we've made, is worth several £100,000 a month. There's an inexorable growth in drugs, and we'll do our best, and we've been hugely successful, and my officers who work on drugs are fantastic. I can't praise them enough. But drugs are controlled by organised criminals, and the current system plays into the hands of organised criminals who make a lot of money from it.
But you've also get this thing, and I think it came about that TT blues thing almost, that you go and get the easy meats quite often. The felons who just do drugs regardless of what you do to them, and you just bang them up for another 5-10 weeks or more. You know what I'm trying to say to you.
But what's interesting, if you look at the data, the number of people who've gone on the drug arrest referral scheme, which is a diversionary scheme for people found in possession of small amounts of drugs, has trebled in 2 years. So we're not trying to send people to prison for 4 or 5 weeks for drugs possession, because the purpose of the scheme is to stop people from going to court. Our focus has been on the people who supply, and the people who supply cannabis, they supply cocaine, they supply heroin, they supply other drugs. And that's where our focus has been, and we've been hugely successful. And for the first time since it opened, Derby Prison is just about at capacity, and that's largely because of the work we've done on drug trafficking, not on drug possession, but on drug trafficking.
So, if it's at capacity, isn't the pressure on you not to do things because they can't cope with any more people? I mean,
that's not for me to consider.
You don't. It never crosses
your
desk
for once. Not for once.
So you could have the situation that they run out of room.
I'm mindful of the situation.
That's an interesting word, mindful.
And I'm sympathetic to the prison governor, because the prison governor has got a tough job and he's doing a great job.
Well, that's 2 code words saying that you do actually think about it.
But we can't, because if people are committing crime, we have to deal with it. If people are trafficking drugs into the Isle of Man, we must deal with it.
Yeah, but then again, every year, the £1.50 is worth of something that's found in somebody, and it's processed, and it costs hundreds and hundreds of pounds to do that. And you again, it's nothing to do with you, but you're just doing your job. Blah, blah, blah.
But those people are amongst the 180 people who went on the referral scheme to stop them going to court. So that's dealt with now at the roadside. So an officer can find somebody in a car with a small piece of cannabis. They will deal with them at the roadside, so they don't come into custody, they don't get charged, they don't go to court, they go on a scheme to divert them from using drugs. And most of the people who go on the scheme don't offend a second time. If they offend a second time, they may well get warned again, but certainly if they offend the third time, they'll go to court, and they deserve to, because you can't just keep ignoring the law, can you?
Okay, moving on, because I know you're busy. Detectable crime is just under 50%, and an island of 85,000. And let's don't talk about Jersey for just a second, we'll come to that. Is that still good enough? We're such a small little place. Less than 50% of crimes are solved. Am I read that right?
You've read 49. The detection rate's 49.6%.
And that's solving it then?
Yeah, in the UK it's 13.8%.
And Jersey's in the tail.
Guernsey's 16%.
Oh, Guernsey's it.
And Jersey was 39%.
Okay, Guernsey's even worse.
So that's partly a measure of police effectiveness.
Yeah.
But if you look at crimes like rape, for example, there will be people who will report a rape to us but who don't want us to do anything about it. And the approach to things like rape and sexual offending should be, what do you as a victim want us to do? If you simply want to tell us about it, then we'll record it and offer you the access to support. We'll even take evidential samples from you. But if you don't want to do anything about it, then we won't do anything about it. But that's a recorded crime that's not cleared. And if you have in the course of a year 12 or 15 rapes and 5 or 6 of them are reported on that basis, well, you're not going to have a good detection rate. But the detection rate for some things needs to be better. It needs to be better for burglary. It needs to be better for some sexual offences. Is there a number you'd be happy with? That should we be at 80, 90%, 100% obviously would be the ideal thing, but no, it's impossible. It's impossible. I accept that. So the rules are really tight in terms of how we mark off a crime as cleared. They're really tight and it's very difficult. So there will be people who don't support a prosecution for domestic assault, for example, and we'll know who's done it. But our ability to record it as cleared isn't what it was even 5 years ago, and certainly not 20 years ago. New laws come in every year. I mean, we sort of lag behind the UK. I think upskirting is now on the books, those sort of things. Does that add pressure that you don't need? It adds more offences. Which means it's more. So the Fraud Act created new offences of fraud, which leads to more crimes being recorded. There's some very big pieces of legislation the Department of Home Affairs are putting through in the next year or so, which will have a considerable impact. There'll be a domestic abuse bill, there'll be a new sex offences bill, there'll be a new licensing bill. There's a criminal jurisdiction or criminal process bill which changes how we operate. Some very big pieces of legislation, so in a year's time you'll be maybe asking me different questions around what we see the impact of that legislation. You've got 2 more of these to go before you go. So 3 more, okay. And we'll be back in part 2. We've got loads more to ask the Chief Constable in our next section.